So, hey, everyone. Hey, glad you're here tonight. This is, I'm really fired up for tonight. Let me tell you, Joe Riccardi, some of you may not know me from the Near North location. So, Justin, you're speaking to folks from Park LP, Park Near North. I think we have some other folks too. So, speaking to people from Park Community Church, but some of you may not know me. I'm the pastor of Park Church, Lincoln Park. And it was, I'm indebted to Nate Payne and Trevor Lovell. So, I was doing my sermon review with those two guys on the Thursday before my Sunday sermon on Romans 11, which was now three plus weeks ago. And they said, you know, it would be great. You should talk to a Jewish believer and just kind of get some feedback from a Jewish believer. And I thought, yeah, that was Thursday at 2:00. And I think I must texted Justin around. I thought, Justin, let me reach out to Justin. And I texted Justin that afternoon and said, hey, can we talk tomorrow morning? I'd love to kind of go over my sermon with you and just hear some feedback from you on it. And Justin obliged. I've known Justin since grad school, I think, at Moody Bible. So I think we met fall 1999, so 21 years. And so I called up Justin. We talked on the phone, and then one thing led to another. I said, Justin, what about having you teach a class post this sermon? He's like, love it. One of my sweet spots would be why there's so few Jews in the pews, which has a lot to do with Romans 11 and partial hardening of Israel. And so all that to say, we advertised it, and almost 100 people signed up. So fired up for Justin. Justin's a good guy, really great guy, married to Judith. How many years you guys married, Justin?
Judy and I, 21 years. Yeah, just 2 weeks ago.
And congratulations. Where did you guys meet?
We met at Willow Creek, South Barrington.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And so you guys have been members there for a long time, correct?
We have. We're at the North Shore campus. We've been there for 16, 17 years.
Great.
Yeah.
And how many children do you guys have?
3 kids. Our oldest is a freshman in college, Mackenzie. Josh is a sophomore at Maine South in Park Ridge, and Madeline is 8th grade at Lincoln in Park Ridge. So
that's great. And it's kind of fun that Jesse Moskovitz is on this call. Her father was in Jewish ministry for a long time, and I told Justin that Jesse says hi. Justin's like, I am in Jewish ministry because of Jesse's father. So kind of fun to hear of that connection as well. So I'm going to pray, and I'm just going to turn it over. They didn't come here to hear me speak, so they haven't all tuned in to hear Joe. So I'm going to pray, and then Justin will just turn it over to you, okay? So, Lord, thanks for tonight. Thanks for Justin and Judy and their children, Justin's ministry and the calling on his life to especially bring to saving, no, he can't do it, but to tell Jewish people about the saving faith of Jesus Christ that he offers, and that's his labor of love. So bless him tonight. Thanks for all those joining. I pray it'd be an encouragement to us. I pray we'd love Christ more because of tonight, and I pray we'd have a greater desire. A lot of us are reading through Matthew this month, and Matthew 8 was today, and Jesus says, pray therefore to the Lord of the harvest, that he may, or Matthew 9, I think was today, that he would send more workers into the field. And I know that would be Justin's prayer, that more men and women would be raised up to reach Jewish people with the gospel. So bless my brother now as I turn it over to him in Christ's name. Amen. Floor is yours, buddy. Teach us. We're excited.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody taking time this evening. My guess is that this is a very relevant topic for you. Which means you probably have Jewish friends, maybe even Jewish relatives. And so my hope and prayer this evening is that our discussion can encourage you in some way in just really helping your Jewish friends, your neighbors, coworkers, come to discover that Jesus really is their king and their forgiver, just as he did in my life. If you haven't picked up yet, you could probably tell from my glasses that I'm Jewish. My Woody Allen glasses, I should say. There's other ways to figure out that I'm Jewish, but we won't get into that this evening. But you probably would like to know, how did a nice Jewish boy like me end up hanging out with a bunch of nice followers of Jesus like you? So let me give you that story, and then we'll address this question, why are there so few Jews in the pews, which is really just another way of asking the question, why don't more Jewish people believe that Jesus is the Messiah, especially when it seems to be so clear to you that he is. Now, so my mother, she grew up in a conservative Jewish home in Skokie, which is obviously a suburb just north of the city that you're all familiar with. There's a large Jewish community there, not quite as large today as it once was. Many Jewish people kind of migrated a little bit further north. Buffalo Grove has become a very popular area. Highland Park, 80% of Highland Park people are Jewish. But I would say there's probably approximately 300,000 Jewish people in the Chicagoland area. In fact, a lot happen, those who live in the city, a lot of them live in the Lincoln Park area. Any of you, I'm just curious, just a show of hands, Anshe Emet, do any of you, have you heard of that synagogue, Anshe Emet? Well, okay, Joe, you have on Broadway. It's a very popular, large synagogue in the city. So my mother did what a lot of conservative Jewish people do, and that's go to synagogue when it really counts. If you know anything about Jewish people, it really counts to show up to synagogue during what's known as the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which just happened, well, September. And then Sukkot was in October. But during the high holidays, that's when the whole sin thing is supposed to get taken care of in Jewish tradition and Jewish teaching. But if you would have asked my mother walking out of the synagogue on the Yom Kippur service, after the Yom Kippur service, do you know for certain that your sins were atoned for? The best answer my mother could have given you is, I can only hope so. Because there really is no such thing as assurance of salvation in Jewish theology and Jewish teaching. My mother was also a very typical Jewish woman, and that she enjoyed fine Jewish delicacies like matzo ball soup and lox and bagels. By the way, that's kind of our litmus test for whether or not you're Jewish. You're born, and then 8 days later, we have a gathering of friends and family. And if you show any indication whatsoever that you're interested in the lox and bagels and the matzo ball soup we put out, we know you're Jewish. Now, it's a little bit more complicated for the boys on that day, but again, we won't get into that this evening. Now, my mother ended up doing something that wasn't very typical, and that she came to believe that Jesus was the Messiah. That happened when I was just 5 years old. My mother was going through a pretty difficult season in her life. She was taking the train to work from Skokie into Chicago, Monday through Friday. And when you take the train to work at the same time every day, you will often see the same people. And there was an African-American man by the name of Josh Wiggins who saw my mom almost every day. And Josh was a follower of Jesus. And he had a prompting one morning from the Holy Spirit that essentially went like this: Josh, that Jewish woman who you see deeply matters to me, and you have never looked into the eyes of someone who doesn't matter to me. And I want you to do what you've been called to do in this world, and that's be my hands and be my feet, be a vessel of truth and grace and mercy and compassion in this woman's life. And so Josh, being obedient to the nudge of God upon his heart, got up out of his seat on that train, and he stepped way outside of his comfort zone. And he walked up to my mom with an extended hand, and he said, I know this is going to sound really strange, but it just seems to me that you could use a friend. And my mother was like, whoa, that is pretty strange. But she said, I'll be honest, I've been going through a really tough season, and I could use all the encouragement I can get. And so Josh just said, well, tell me your story. I'd love to know more about what's going on in your life. And so she shared her story. And in time, as they got to know each other better, he started to unfold God's redemptive story in his own life. And he told her about a Jewish rabbi from Nazareth who had radically impacted and transformed his life. And he believed that this rabbi could do the same for hers. Now, if you're a little fuzzy about which rabbi he was talking about, of course, he was talking about Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth. And he challenged my mom to get acquainted with Jesus. And she took him up on that challenge. And she was just utterly blown away by the compassion of Jesus that she discovered when reading the Gospels in the New Testament. And she came to believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And a few years later, Josh and his wife, Liz, and their three daughters, Angie, Tasha, and Tina, had the opportunity to team up on me to help me understand that the most Jewish thing that any Jewish kid could ever do is embrace Jesus as Messiah. And with as much understanding as I had as an eight-year-old kid, I embraced Jesus and began my journey with Jesus. And I would say that my journey with him has really been a lot about learning to reconcile my Jesusness with my Jewishness, coming to realize that I didn't have to check my Jewishness at the door in order to become a follower of Jesus. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And so let's just dive in here together for a few moments, and then we'll do some Q&A. To address this question, why aren't there more Jewish people like me, like my mother, in the pews? Jewish people who believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So I've essentially identified that there's three main barriers or categories that we could look at as to why a Jewish person may not believe that Jesus is the Messiah. I'm going to spend most of our time this evening talking about two, and I'll briefly address the third. But the first I want to mention, and maybe you got a handout this evening. I think Joe emailed you. If you didn't get it, that's fine. But it looks something like this, real simple. Why are there so few Jews in the pews? And some fill in the blanks. If you don't have it, again, that's fine. But the first area that I would identify is what I would just simply say are cultural barriers. Cultural barriers. The best way to explain this is I want you to imagine with me for a moment that, let's see, all of the attenders, all of the Jewish people who go to Anshe Emet Synagogue on Broadway there in Chicago come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, including the rabbi. In fact, the rabbi, let's see, I think I wrote it down. I did write it down somewhere. What's his name? I forget his name. Anyway, let's say it's Rabbi Goldberg. Probably pretty safe to say it's Rabbi Goldberg. So Rabbi Goldberg and his entire congregation come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And Joe, he hears about this. And Joe's like, wow, that's incredible. I'm going to make an appointment to meet with Rabbi Goldberg to welcome him into the Christian community. And I'm going to give him a few tips on how to make his transition from the Jewish community into the Christian community as smooth and as seamless as possible, because, hey, I'm a good Christian and I'm a good neighbor, and I want to do what I can to help. So Joe goes over to the synagogue. Joe gets there, and on his way to the rabbi's office, he goes into the sanctuary. He looks around to just kind of check some things out. And then he goes over to the rabbi's office and he says, Rabbi, I heard the great news. You believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Welcome to the Christian community. But now let me give you a few tips. So, Rabbi, I noticed when I came to your synagogue today that it actually says synagogue on the sign. Well, I want you to know, in the Christian community, we don't call our places of worship synagogues. So you probably are going to want to get the name changed. And Anshe Emet, nobody really knows what that means. So you might want to call it First Jewish Church of Chicago, something like that. That'll probably go over well. Now, and in fact, I know a guy who does signs. I could probably get you a good deal on a sign. Now, and Rabbi Goldberg, I also noticed when I came into your synagogue, or maybe we call it church now, I looked into the sanctuary and I picked up a book just to look at what it was. And I noticed there was a lot of Hebrew in it. Well, Rabbi, we don't really do this like Hebrew liturgy and stuff in the church. So I don't know, you might want to get something different. And I noticed too, like things that I just didn't really understand. I don't know, have you ever heard of like hymns? I'm sure you've heard of hymns. Maybe you want to start singing hymns now. Or if you want to be a bit more contemporary, like our church, I can get you some great CDs of like Chris Tomlin and Matt Redman and Passion Worship. There's some great stuff out there that your people are just going to absolutely love. And I hope this wasn't offensive, Rabbi, or is it a pastor? I'm not sure yet, but I went and I looked into, I think it's called the Ark of the Covenant. And I peeked in there and I looked and I said, wow, like it's the scroll of Moses, right? Like the Torah. That's amazing. That's really cool. But Rabbi, you need to know, like we read the whole Bible now. And so you might want to, maybe you want to get a table and put that out in the front of your church, big Bible. That's like I grew up in a church that had a big Bible, and you might want to put that out on so everybody knows that you're like a full gospel follower of Jesus. And so, yeah, and Rabbi, something else that I noticed, the service times that you have are on Friday evening and Saturday morning. That's not really when we do church. We do church on, well, sometimes Saturday night and Sunday morning. So you're probably going to want to at least add a Sunday morning service. And oh yeah, Rabbi too. I also, there's some holidays that I've heard you celebrate, like Passover and Hanukkah. Well, you're probably not going to need to do that anymore. You're going to have to probably, like, Christmas and Easter. These are great holidays. And Rabbi, Christmas is coming up. I've got a bunch of extra Christmas lights that you can use to decorate the trees outside your synagogue. I'll be happy to get those over to you. Oh yeah. And my mother, she has an amazing ham and pea casserole recipe. I'm going to get that for you because you're going to have so much leftover ham after your first Easter. You're not going to know what to do with it. So I'm going to take care of you. I am going to set you up. So Rabbi, it's just, again, it's so great that you are now a part of the Christian community, part of the church. And, again, just give me a ring. If I can help with anything, just let me know. Now, I see many of you smiling, kind of laughing along with me, right? And why are you doing that? You're doing that because you know that Joe would never do that, right? Joe's, he's way too savvy and way too sensitive to do something like that. But can I be honest with you? This is exactly what the Christian community has been doing with the Jewish community for approximately the last 1,800 years. Jesus is your Messiah. We want you to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And when you come to believe in him, you can check all of that Jewish stuff at the door. You don't have to do any of that stuff anymore. You can stop being Jewish. Now, let me tell you, that approach has not been very effective whatsoever in building what I like to call redemptive bridges with our Jewish friends and neighbors. And that gets a little bit into understanding some of these cultural barriers that exist between the church and the Jewish community. A lot of this stuff that we do as followers of Jesus just isn't what Jewish people do. And I want you to know something. Jewish people, the ones that I know, actually really like being Jewish. It may not be for religious reasons. It may simply be for cultural reasons. And there is definitely a perception that the Christian community is on a totally different path or a totally different calendar than the Jewish community is. So what I'd like to do, Joe, if we could show that video right now of Andrew Lustig.
I'm going to try. You guys got to listen carefully. Make sure. I really hope I could do this. Okay.
Yeah.
Share content.
See it so you can get a little bit of a taste of.
Okay, I think this works. Listen carefully. You got to listen carefully, though.
So, Joe, it doesn't seem to be working, right?
Oh, you can't hear it? No?
Nope.
Oh, I thought it was working fine. You're kidding.
So Joe, just repeat everything he just said.
You didn't hear? Wait, hold on. Wait, one more time. Hold on. Wait. Let's try this real fast. We're going to try. You're going to look at my computer screen. Tell me if this has to work. Hold on. This is not, tell me if you look at this. I mean,
I am the collective pride and excitement that is felt when we find out that new actor, that great athlete, his chief of staff, is Jewish. And I am the collective guilt and shame that is felt when we find out that serial killer, that Ponzi schemer, that wife beater is Jewish. I am the Jewish star, tattooed on the chest of the teenager who chooses to rebel against his parents' and grandparents' warnings of a lonely Goyim cemetery by embracing that same Judaism and making permanent his Jewish identity. I am all the words in Yiddish I've been called all my life that I still don't understand. I am going to all 3 Fish shows this weekend. I am my melody of Adon Olam. I am my melody of Adon Olam. The words may be the same, but I am my melody of Adon Olam. I am not getting bar mitzvah. I am a bar mitzvah. I am a concept foreign to the rest of the world. I am not Judaism. I am sleepaway camp. I am your grandmother who's seen Short Kav in Auschwitz, who's seen 49, 67, and 73, and who's tired of trying to make peace with those people who just want to blow up buses and destroy her people. I am the 19-year-old who's seen Bujrus, Don't Mess with the Zohan, and Waltz with Bashir, and who thinks, who knows, peace is possible. I am the complicated reason you take the cheese off the burger you eat at the Saturday morning tailgate. I am constantly struggling to understand my Jewish identity outside of religion. I am the Torah and not the Old Testament. I am a kippah and not a skull cap. I am a Jew and not an Israeli. 5,000 years old, not 60. A religion, not a country. I'm never asked if I have horns or a pot of gold, if I rule the world, or why I killed Jesus. I am asked where my black cat is, if I really get 8 presents on my Christmas, why my sideburns aren't super long, and if I've really never tried bacon. I am asked what a gefilte fish is. I say I don't know, I don't like it, nobody does, but we eat it because it's what we do. I am asked if my dad's a lawyer. I say no. My mom is. My dad's an accountant. I am asked if my grandparents were in the Holocaust, as if it was a movie. Yeah, they were. But luckily, they were also on Schindler's List. I am on JDate and not Match.com because, well, it's just easier that way. I am that feeling of obligation to buy the Dead Sea salt at the mall kiosk because you know the woman's Israeli. I am an IDF sweatshirt and the chai around your neck. I am a $100 challah cover that you will never use and a 5-shekel piece of red string that you will wear until it withers away. I am your Hebrew name. I am your Israeli cousins. I am your Torah portion and your 13 candles. I am your bat mitzvah dress and the cute Israeli soldier on your birthright trip. I am 18 when I discovered that Israel is not actually a Garden of Eden of milk and honey where Jews of all backgrounds, ethnicities, and styles of worship come together, eternally happy and appreciative to do a constant horror in the streets of the Holy Land. I am still confident that it will be. I am the way your stomach forgets to be hungry and your lungs forget to breathe when the rabbi commands the final Tekiah Gedolah at an entire congregation. A congregation that is not any one synagogue, but an entire people listens to it on January 1st as a ball dropping in Times Square. But today, any day in late September or early October for the 5,770th time is a ram's horn being blown into for what seems like 10 minutes, like the 8 days the oil burned and how David defeated Goliath and how Moses parted the seas. It would have been enough, Dayenu. Have we won the war and how your grandparents survived? Nes Gadol Hayah Sham Shana Tova. Time for bagels and lox because I am Jewish.
Nice rebound there, Joe. Thank you. My guess is that when Jesse Moskowitz, Jewish believer there at Park with you guys, when she watches something like that, any Jewish believer who may be here, anyone from a Jewish background, their heart swells up when they hear Andrew describe many things that really we identify with. They're like, he's talking about our people, and we get it and we connect with it in a very deep way. And that doesn't stop when we believe in Jesus. One of the most challenging things for me being in the church for the last 30 plus years, 40 plus years, forget my age, is living in an environment where people often forget that I'm Jewish, where people forget that these things matter to me, that when it's Rosh Hashanah, that's New Year's for me, that I'm getting together with my family and enjoying the foods that we enjoy eating, that I haven't stopped celebrating Hanukkah. So you get the idea. Being Jewish is an important part of our identity. And so the answer to, if you've got the handout, how do we address this cultural barrier? It would really be begin with affirming and embracing the Jewishness of your Jewish neighbors. Affirm and embrace their Jewish identity. Be intentional about that. Don't forget, when you see Jesse and it's the high holidays, probably a good idea to say Happy New Year, or if you want to be really good about it, Lashana Tovah. When you see any of your Jewish friends or neighbors, know what their holidays are. Be just engaged with that. I also want to say this too. I think it's really important. This would be the B to the responding to the cultural barriers, that we need to do a better job as followers of Jesus, engaging in the Jewish heritage of our own faith. We need to remember that Jesus was Jewish. He never stopped being Jewish. Paul was Jewish. The disciples were Jewish. The majority of the first century church was Jewish. All of the holidays that Jewish people celebrate today, that's exactly what Jesus and his disciples were doing. It's, I think, incredibly helpful when we understand more of who Jesus is in his Jewish context. I so appreciate what Philip Yancey wrote in his book, The Jesus I Never Knew. If you've never read this book, I highly recommend it. But in the book, he writes, I know it by heart. I can no more understand Jesus apart from his Jewishness, any more than I can understand Gandhi apart from his Indianness. If I really want to get to know Jesus' story as I would anyone else's story, I need to learn something of his culture, heritage, or his culture, family, and background. And I'll tell you, when I read that from Yancey many years ago, the light bulb went on for me that all of this stuff that I've been doing as a Jewish believer, or just as a Jewish person, forget the believer part, just as a Jewish person, can actually help me understand a bit more about who Jesus is. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't gotten more acquainted with the Rabbi Jesus, there are some fantastic resources out there in which to do that. You could go to my website. My parents came up with it. It's justincrone.com. I added the .com later, but just go to justincrone.com. I've got a whole resource list there of great resources that'll help you to engage more in the Jewish roots of your faith. And I think by doing so, it'll actually help you to communicate more effectively who Jesus is with your Jewish friends. So that's the cultural barrier part. I want to spend some time here talking about the historical, or the next barrier, which would be historical barriers. And if you've got questions related to the cultural thing, hang on to those. But the other category would be historical barriers. And what do I mean by historical barriers? What I mean is things that have happened in history between the church and the Jewish community. Not so good things that have happened that have created obstacles between the Jewish people really being able to want to engage with who Jesus is. And let me read to you this quote from John Dawson. He's the international president of Youth with a Mission. He wrote, "People who have truly followed Jesus have always been genuine lovers of the Jewish people. But it is also true that the Christian church in name, though not in spirit, has been responsible for much of the terrible suffering of the Jewish people." What is he talking about? Terrible suffering. Consider what Edward Flannery wrote, Anguish of in his book, Anguish of the Jews. By the way, I first read this book because Jesse's father, Jan, gave it to me. And in this book, he writes, "The vast majority of Christians, even well educated, are all but totally ignorant of what happened to Jews in history and of the culpable involvement of the church. It is little exaggeration to state that those pages of history Jews have committed to memory are the very ones that have been torn from Christian and secular history books." Which pages of history is he talking about? Let me just give you a few lines from that history. Origen, one of the church fathers in the 3rd century. This is what he wrote about the Jewish people. He wrote, "A Jew murdered the Lord Jesus and is still today responsible for that murder." He also wrote, "The Jews were altogether abandoned and possess now none of what were considered their ancient glories, so that there is no indication of any divinity abiding amongst them." Really? Wow. No divinity abiding amongst them. John Chrysostom in the 4th century, in his homilies against the Jews. And if you're not familiar with who John Chrysostom was, he was essentially the Billy Graham of his era. And in his homilies, he said, "You Jews did slay Christ. You did lift violent hands against the master. You did spill his precious blood. This is why," hear this, "this is why you have no chance for atonement, excuse, or defense. No chance." This is what became known as the charge of deicide, the charge of murdering God, because Jews, quote unquote, murdered Jesus or were responsible for his murder. Therefore, what they tried to do was murder God. And as a result, they would forever be damned, rejected by God. He also said this, gets even worse. God always hated the Jews. And when I read that, I think, really? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, Ruth, Naomi, go down the list, right? Really? And then he said this, if that wasn't bad enough, "It is incumbent upon all Christians to hate the Jews." It's incumbent upon all Christians to hate the Jews. St. Augustine, also in the 4th century, in his book, The Creed, "The true image of the Jew is Judas Iscariot. The Jew can never understand the scriptures and forever will bear the guilt for the death of Jesus." Wow. Okay. I wish I could stop there, but I can't. I have a feeling if I didn't, Jesse would not be very happy with me. I'm going to give you his name after I read what he wrote. And I'm reading this to you because this has come up in many of my conversations with Jewish people over the years. He wrote this: "What then shall we Christians do with this damned rejected race of Jews? Let me give you my honest advice. First, their synagogue should be set on fire, and whatever is left should be buried in dirt so that no one may ever be able to see a stone or cinder of it. And this ought to be done for the honor of God and Christianity in order that God may see that we are Christians. Jewish prayer books should be destroyed and rabbis forbidden to preach under the threat of death. The Jewish people should be dealt with, their homes smashed and destroyed, and their inmates put under one roof or in a stable like gypsies to teach them that they are not master in our land. Jews should be banned from the roads and markets, their property seized, and then these poisonous, envenomed worms should be drafted into forced labor and made to earn their bread by the sweat of their noses. If the Jews could kill us all, they would gladly do so, and often do it, especially those who profess to be physicians. They know all that is known about medicine in Germany. They can give poison to a man of which he will die in an hour or in 10 or 20 years. They thoroughly understand this art. May we all be free of this insufferable, devilish burden, the Jews. Now, I've shared that text with a number of people over the years, and many of them think when they hear that, oh my, that had to have been Adolf Hitler. And I wish it had been, because if it was, it would be easier, much easier to excuse. But unfortunately, it's a name that you're probably all very familiar with. And his name was Martin Luther, the great reformer, who wrote this in his book on the Jews and their lies in 1543. In fact, one of his last messages that he gave just a few days before he died was a rant against the Jewish people. That's been super analyzed. Why would Martin Luther do this? Some people have said, well, it's because he got kind of senile later in life. However, there is evidence that he had feelings of this earlier on in his ministry. And he could get pretty vulgar at various people who did not agree with his point of view. I do not think that his intention was for what he wrote to actually come to fruition. But this is exactly what happened. His book on the Jews and their lies was widely read in Nazi Germany. The book itself was used as a part of the Nazi defense case during the Nuremberg trials for them to help justify why they did what they did. And if you don't think that Luther's writings had a significant influence in Germany, in fact, in many parts of Europe in the previous century, let me just tell you what Adolf Hitler had to say about him. He said of Luther, Luther was a great man, a giant. With one blow, he heralded the new dawn. He saw the Jew as we are only beginning to see him today. I wish I didn't have to share this stuff with you, but I do. And I do because, again, as I mentioned, it often comes up in my discussions, and I know other people's discussions with their Jewish friends and neighbors. One of my good friends is a Holocaust survivor, pretty well known here in the Chicago area. He's the founding president of the Illinois Holocaust Museum in Skokie. We had dinner a few years ago, and he asked me, Justin, why do you believe that Jesus is the Messiah? And I was like, oh man, this is great. I wish more people asked me that question. And so of course, I took a few moments to share with him why I thought he was the Messiah. And then after I shared why I thought Jesus was the Messiah, I asked Sam, I said, Sam, why don't you think that Jesus is the Messiah? And he said, Justin, I'll be honest with you. I just have a really hard time believing that if Jesus really was the Messiah, that those who follow him would write or say the things that Martin Luther did. He said, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And I said, Sam, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. And so what was my response to Sam beyond that? what's our response to these historical barriers when these barriers come up? What I said to Sam was, Sam, I get it, but let me encourage you, don't let 1,800 years of Jesus's followers speak for Jesus. Let Jesus speak for Jesus. Let Jesus speak for himself. That's on, if you're filling out that handout. Let Jesus speak for Jesus. And I'm often reminded as I read the Gospels, you'll see people were amazed at Jesus. They were amazed by his teaching. It says on numerous occasions. A lot of people have come to faith just through reading the teachings of Jesus. I know that Sam's done some reading about Jesus. I know he's done some reading of the New Testament. He actually called me a few weeks ago. I probably shouldn't be saying this because we're recording this. So if anybody's watching, please don't go out and share this. But he called me a few weeks ago to essentially kind of confess. He said, I don't know who else to tell this to, but my grandson believes in Jesus. And I don't know what to say to him. And I said, Sam, maybe you should just ask him why. Just ask him why. Maybe you want to ask him, is there a book I can read that will help me better understand why you believe that Jesus is the Messiah? And he said, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that. So anyway, pray for Sam. But all this to say, historical barriers could be very significant when it comes to why there aren't more Jewish people in the pews, why more Jewish people don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And then let me give this other recommendation, and then we'll kind of move to some Q&A. The way to respond to these historical barriers, very simple. Love your neighbor. Love your Jewish neighbor. Just love them right where they're at. No strings attached. Get to know their story. Take an active interest in who they are. Be their friend. And in the midst of that, be authentic about your faith. And we can talk a bit more about that. There's another handout that, I don't know, Joe, if you sent it or if you want to share it with people. But at the top of it, it just simply says reaching Jewish people through the local church. And it gives a lot of my recommendations on what I think local churches can do to be more welcoming, to be more hospitable to their Jewish friends and neighbors, as well as what you can do personally in engaging with your Jewish friends and neighbors. And for those of you who like to have everything filled out in a handout, there's a whole nother category of barriers, which are the theological barriers between the church and the Jewish people. We could spend quite a bit of time talking about those. I'm going to tell you just real briefly what the two biggies are, the two big theological barriers. One, Jesus cannot be God. They have a very difficult time believing that a man, a human, can be God. And so that's a major sticking point for many who actually, I don't want to say for a lot of Jews, because frankly, a lot of Jews aren't religious. And so they're not thinking in those theological categories. But if they move a little bit further down their spiritual journey, the Jesus being God thing could be a real stumbling block. There are plenty of texts in both the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, and the New Testament that defend the divinity of Jesus. If you're interested in those, I could point those out to you later. But Isaiah 9:6, you're going to be singing a lot about that just next month, but Isaiah 9:6. And then the other theological barrier is that the Messiah is supposed to bring peace on earth and goodwill toward men. If you look at the world today, there's not a lot of peace on earth and very little goodwill toward men. This cannot be the Messiah. And that is a really good objection to the messiahship of Jesus. The response to that, however, is that we as followers of Jesus believe that when the Messiah comes the first time, it's to establish a pathway of peace between God and man. And then when he comes the second time, it'll be to finish what he started, to bring full peace on earth and goodwill toward men. So it's really a debate. Is there one coming of the Messiah, or are there two comings of the Messiah? And the Old Testament or Hebrew text that really defends what I would say best defends the second coming of the Messiah would be Zechariah chapters 12, 13, and 14. But we'll just leave it there for now with the theological part. And let's just kind of open this up to some Q&A, some thoughts that you may have in regards to some of what we've just discussed.
Yeah, I'd love to take some questions. Maybe if you could just be brief, take your mic off mute and just have a brief question, and then we could see if we can get through 3, 4 of them. So I'd love to hear from you guys. I have some thoughts, but would love to hear some of you guys. You could put in the chat box as well if you prefer that. But, or yeah, any would. Maybe just one question. I'll start to tee it up, Justin. Why does it seem that Jewish, again, for God, it's not extra hard for him to convert a Jew to believe in Christ than it is for him to convert a Muslim to believe in Christ. There's no extra work done on his part. What are you seeing, I guess? So Justin works for Chosen People Ministries, right?
Yes.
So he works for a ministry dedicated to, are you, again, I know when it comes to salvation, God does it a million different ways. Any patterns, I guess, might be any patterns that you would see, and what are you seeing? Again, short answers so we can get to more questions as people are thinking, but are there any patterns you see? And then what are you seeing maybe just across this country?
Yeah, so we are not seeing like a massive amount of Jewish people coming to embrace Jesus as Messiah. It is just really one life at a time. What I am noticing is that there is definitely a warming up towards Jesus. Jesus as being being one of theirs, being one of ours, someone who was actually Jewish, a rabbi, a good teacher. There have been an amazing amount of resources that have been created, written by Jews who don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah, about Jesus's Jewishness. A good friend of mine, Rabbi Evan Moffick, he's a rabbi of a congregation up in Highland Park. He wrote a couple of books understanding why every Christian should understand the Jewishness of Jesus and what every Christian needs to know about Passover, and seeing that there is a relationship between Jesus and the Jewish community. And why are books like this being written? Because there's a lot of interfaith marriage that's going on in the Jewish community today. It's been going on for a while, but a lot of Jews who are marrying outside the Jewish faith, who are marrying Catholics or Christian, whatever. And so they're trying to find common ground. And so that is definitely a trend, this trying to find common ground. There are definitely Jewish people who've come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. There's a fantastic website produced by Chosen People Ministries and another organization called One for Israel, called I Found Shalom. There are several dozen testimonies of Jewish people who've come to embrace Jesus as Messiah. The one that I really want you to see, I wish I could remember his name right now, but we just released it. It's the testimony of the grandson of one of the people who was killed at the synagogue in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh just 2 years ago. So the grandson of one of the people who was murdered is a believer, and he shared the story. And he even shares that he believed that Jesus is the Messiah at the memorial service for his grandfather. Powerful. Take advantage of resources like that. Point your Jewish friends to it. It can be incredibly helpful. Yeah, that's a little bit long of an answer, but yeah, any other questions that someone might have?
We see like Isaiah 53, so many symbols. What does that have any kind of bearing or connection, a bridge?
Isaiah 53, it can. If you can convince a Jewish person to actually read Isaiah 53, it can be incredibly impactful. It's one of the most, if you've not read Isaiah 53, you need to read it, because I would say it's by far the clearest prophecy of the suffering Messiah, the Messiah who would suffer and die for the transgressions of his people. There's been books that have been written about it. Chosen People Ministries, Mitch Glaser wrote a book, Isaiah 53 Explained. I know a lot of Jewish people who that chapter alone has been a significant part in their faith story. So yeah, that can be very, very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say this though, most Jewish people aren't looking for prophecies about the Messiah that have been fulfilled. That's just not what's on the radar screen of most Jewish people. So I don't recommend approaching Jewish people with, hey, I've got this long list of prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. Are you interested? They probably aren't. And I'll say this, like I've got family members who've come to faith. My uncle in particular, what convinced my uncle to believe that Jesus had some merit was I gave him a book about relationships because he was struggling in his life just with dating relationships and such. And so I gave him a book written by some believers on dating relationships. And that really opened his eyes up to seeing, wow, what you Christians believe, what you followers of Jesus believe, this is some good stuff. And that was a very big first step for him into eventually coming to the conclusion that Jesus was the way to go. And there was other things, of course, too. He started listening to Moody Radio, found a lot of encouragement, a lot of insight, listening to Christian radio.
A lot of these people don't know about the radio. They don't know that something. A lot of the young group, they don't know what you got to explain. The radio in the
That's
car.
Right. I think the car still has it.
I think, yeah.
90.1 FM, and if that doesn't work, my wife, who works for Moody Radio, will kill me if I don't tell you. You can download their app and put their app on your phone.
Joe, we're millennials, and we listen to Michael Rydelnik every weekend, who is a Messianic Jew, and we on the radio.
I bet you Justin knows Michael. I'm sure he does. Yes. Michael, Justin, Nate asked a question about you can see it in the chat, but talk about Jew converts to Christ. What kind of backlash do they receive in general? What is the name of that book that was really popular about 25 years ago when a guy's, I think, daughter came to faith in Jesus? And Betrayed was the name of the book. Right. I think Betrayed. Yeah, Betrayed was the name of the book. I don't know if that man's with the Lord now. Remind me of his name. Yes. Do you remember?
Stan Telshin.
What is it again? Stan
Telshin.
And the father's name was what?
No, that was the father's name, Stan Telshin. I don't remember his father's name.
Yeah. So that was a book. I remember when I became a follower, that was a popular book about he felt so betrayed that his daughter, it was the biggest betrayal to a Jewish family that his daughter could trust in Christ, and he did his own search. So can you generally, because a lot of times Park is predominantly involved in Muslim ministry. That's where we've targeted our missions effort. And as you may know or may not know, obviously, but Muslim converts in general, that's not good. That's like, you're done with the family, you're out. Like, how could you become a Christian? Would you say in general, because I do agree with you, Justin, a lot of what I find when I have friends that I have my sister, she's no longer married to him, but for about 35 years, she was married to a Jewish man, even though they were neither one of them were ever practicing anything. But a lot of Jews I meet today or know are more cultural Jews, like you alluded to. Just, I'm Jewish, dude. I'm a Jew. That's what I am. Like, you're a Christian.
Jesus.
So,
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's one of the challenges we have in sharing our faith, because we just think, bro, my friend's Jewish. I don't bring Jesus to him. You know, it's not for him. But anyway, to Nate's question, do you see that still in general? Is that something, or it'd be like so many families are culturally Jew, it doesn't matter? Or is it still like, no, this is our identity. How dare you leave our family, or leave our family? You will be leaving our family if you,
Yeah, coming to believe that Jesus is the Messiah is really perceived as kind of like the unforgivable sin in most Jewish families. Like that's kind of like, that's the one area you're not supposed to go. It's probably not as volatile today as it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. And that's simply because clearly there's definitely more Jewish people who've come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So they're more familiar with it. It's just like, come on, of all things you had to believe in, you had to do that one. And sadly for them, even in the Jewish community today, that's kind of seen as like, you just handed in your Jewish card. So there's this feeling of, if you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, you're really no longer a member of the tribe. So this is where I think it's very important for the church. We need to do what we can to counter that perception, because if the church lives in such a way as if it completely disregards that Jesus was Jewish, that just adds more merit to their accusation that, look, Jews who believe in Jesus are no longer Jewish. So the church needs to embrace and affirm that Jesus was was just Jewish, but he is Jewish. In fact, when he returns, Bible indicates that his people are going to recognize him as one of their own. And so I think that's why, if there's anything you can do, if people often ask, Justin, what's the one thing I can do to help my Jewish friend understand that Jesus is the Messiah? The one thing you can do is what I said. The one thing, remind them that Jesus is theirs. Remind them that Jesus is Jewish. That you, as a non-Jewish follower of Jesus, you've been grafted in.
Romans 11.
You've been grafted. You're the unnatural branch that was grafted into the olive tree. They're the natural branch.
Okay.
You're the ones, and you use the word, somebody used the word convert. It's not Jews who convert when they believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Okay? That's just a natural progression of a Jewish person on their spiritual journey. It's Gentiles who convert when they come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. At least if you read the Bible with the Jewish glasses that I do.
Got a question from Kate Arnold. I'm not sure that's a Kate Arnold I know well, who's no longer, he's out of town now, but it might be another Kate Arnold. It might be two Kate Arnolds. But she asked about the Orthodox community, reaching the Orthodox community, which I have historically found that is hands off. Like they actually know the cues. So if they go up to someone and you share, like, well, I'm a follower of Jesus, they flee from you, and there's a hostility there. It almost feels like Orthodox Jews are told, like, you keep away from, or if you go up to share whatever they share with people, and you share and say Jesus Christ is God, they just they know to take off. So again, only God can change your heart. It's not harder for God to save an Orthodox Jew than an atheist or a Muslim or a religious upbringing kid. But any work with the Orthodox Jewish community, which a lot of us may not see regularly, but obviously on Devon Avenue in Chicago, walk there on a Friday and you'll see floods.
That is by far the most challenging subculture within the Jewish community to reach. There are some rumors that, particularly more so in Israel than here in the United States, that there are a number of underground Orthodox believers. It is incredibly difficult for them to, I hate to use the term, but to break out of that community. If you've not seen the documentary One of Us on Netflix, I highly recommend it. Watch the film One of Us. I do have some friends who are working to try to reach out to that community in Brooklyn. And it is difficult. There are a couple of Orthodox Jews just within the past year that I know who have come to faith. But the biggest challenge for them is if they leave their community, they've got nothing. They're excommunicated. That means they can never see their family again. And so it's very, very difficult, and a lot of prayer is needed for that community.
Well, maybe one more. We have another one. Danielle's got a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you speak a little bit to just what your assimilation process for you and your family has looked like in reconciling your Christian identity with your Jewish
oh yeah,
and also speaking to like the decisions that you made in raising your children? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I love
your wife's got Jewish background, correct? No.
Oh yeah, I thought you were asking about
your wife. No, your wife.
My wife, not from a Jewish background. So yeah, not familiar with a lot of the Jewish customs. So what have we done? And it looks different for every Jewish believer that I know. Some, just so you're aware, some attend Messianic synagogues, Messianic congregations, where they stay completely on the Jewish life cycle, the Jewish calendar, celebrate every single Jewish holiday on the days that they occur, do not traditionally engage with what would be considered the Christian holidays like Christmas and Easter, but yet fully, of course, believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So I fall more kind of in, I don't know if in the middle or maybe more towards the church side, since I go to a church, and obviously Willow Creek, you know, we don't do Jewish holidays there. So how do I do it? We still have a Passover Seder in our home. We still celebrate Hanukkah. I go to a Messianic congregation. We go to a Messianic congregation for the high holidays, for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I still choose to fast on Yom Kippur. So does our family. I'm trying to think some of the other things that I may do. Obviously, very strong connection to Israel. So that's some of the ways that I've lived out my Jewish identity. I've also chosen to engage pretty heavily in participating in Jewish causes. So to me, staying connected with the larger Jewish community is very important to me. So that's the way that I've reconciled it. Oh, and most importantly, I make sure that at least once a month, I have lox and bagels. And Judy, my wife, has learned how to make an incredible mean pot of matzo ball soup.
I got to come over sometime for that. You got to tell me this winter. I want to try some of Judy's matzo ball soup. So
I'll juggle it for you.
Come on. So wonderful. Well, Justin, this has been great. This has been super, I think, encouraging to our folks, and it's recorded now. So we're going to put this on our YouTube, LP YouTube page. And yeah, funny enough, Justin, last April, this past April, we had booked him the year before to come and lead a Passover Seder for us. I don't know if, Justin, you remember that. We booked you in 2018 for 2019. And then obviously, we booked you in 2019 for 2020. Obviously, everything that happened, we couldn't do a Passover Seder from a Christian perspective this past Easter, Passover season. But who knows, maybe next year, maybe God willing. And now we already got a big crew that they like you, I think. They like you. You're a funny guy. You're personable, and I think we'd get a big number. So, and let me close in prayer, and then I'll send us off. So, Lord, thanks for tonight. Thanks for Justin and his life and ministry, his family, and God, we just lift up the work of Justin, which is really the cry of all our hearts, to see more Jewish brothers and sisters in the kingdom, men and women who are Jewish people right now that would come in trust and become Jewish believers, Lord God. So we just ask again that you would send more workers into the field. The harvest is plentiful. There is plenty to do, Father God, plenty of men and women in our lives. I pray we would not see anyone as off limits because of their background, but we would share Christ and with all people know you more deeply, Jesus Christ, as a Jewish man risen from the dead. And so give us openings, I pray, to share the hope we have. And Lord, why not? Why can't we ask you to give each of us an opportunity, even in these next couple of months, to lead someone who's of Jewish background to faith in your Son, Father God? You could do that, and we would be open. And so bless our friend again. Bless his ministry. Thank you for the influence of Jesse's father, leading Justin really to ministry. Bless our sister. I see Jeff Kaplan on the call, or might have been on the call, Jewish believer, and maybe some others. And so thank you for your church. Thanks for Park. Thanks for this night where we get to learn and pray that we would deepen our hearts and passions for you, Jesus, but then also to see your kinsmen, as Paul says, Paul's kinsmen according to the flesh, come to faith in your Son. And so we pray this all in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. Thanks, everybody. We'll have this up on the YouTube channel.
If I could ever be a resource to anyone, don't hesitate to reach out. Coffee, lunch, whatever. And you could also sign up for my periodic updates, just short teachings and just what I'm doing and stuff like that. You can sign up for that at my website. So again, great getting a little acquainted with everyone, and hope we can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Justin. Blessings, everybody.